want to once again welcome you guys to How to Get Visitors to Call Your Church Home. My name is Ariel Nieves. I am the discipleship pastor at Christ Tabernacle. You can see and hear Kelly all the way from Texas. Awesome to have you on board. Thank you so much for joining us. There's a couple of others that are online. All right, so I want to honor your time. Let's just kind of jump right through it, right to it, especially since you guys can hear me, see me clearly. All right, so I am super excited to gather, especially with pastors and leaders who absolutely love the Lord, love the ministry, and really have a desire to see people grow. And that's really the whole point of an assimilation process, is really helping people go from visitors all the way to membership, but really spiritual growth. And so that's what we're going to be doing tonight, talking about an assimilation process and how to get visitors to call your church home. And so just real quick for your viewing pleasure, want to make sure that you guys turn everything off in the background. If there's anything in the background that might be, it might just kind of make it a little bit difficult since we're live online. Also, make sure you guys take a moment, just kind of silence your phones. And then close the door if you're in an office or in a setting where you can kind of close the door. That'd be awesome. Give yourself a little bit of sense of privacy. And really, for the next 60 minutes, this is really all about your growth and really your church's growth. And so I want to make sure that you can do whatever you can to be focused on that. And then at the end, if you stay tuned to the end, I want to just share with you how you can get this bonus. This bonus is called 21-day follow-up plan. And in the plan, I just talk a little bit about a 21-day outreach or an opportunity for you to reach to your visitors. It includes emails. It includes just all of the texts required to reach out. And so it's going to be a real help to you. And so I don't really know much about you, and so this will kind of just help me. So if you can, just kind of let me know on a scale of 1 to 10, how effective is your current assimilation process? So if you had to take a moment and just kind of measure or take a look at how effective your assimilation process is, just on a scale of 1 to 10, how is it? 1 being not too good, and 10 being completely amazing. You're connecting every first-time visitor that comes to your church. And so just kind of let me know on a scale of 1 to 10, um, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your assimilation process? And if you guys are watching online, please feel free to jump right into the chat. There's a chat room. You can just kind of sign in using your Facebook account. And so it would be fantastic just to have you jump on with us. And that way you can kind of just, we can have some interactivity. And so how effective is your current assimilation process on a scale of 1 to 10? And as you guys are thinking about that, also just think about, if you had to kind of give it one word, what is missing from your assimilation process? I mean, is there that one thing that you can potentially do that would really take your assimilation process to the next level? And so, Kelly, thank you again for sharing. A 5. Kelly says we definitely can and need to do a lot better. Awesome, thank you for sharing. And then anyone else who wants to just kind of jump online, just kind of give us a gauge. It just kind of helps just really facing the realities of where we are in our assimilation process. All right, so I want you to know that you are in the right place. You are in the right place. If you struggle to get people to visit your church, you're in the right place if you got first-time visitors, but really no clear next steps. Definitely in the right place if you don't have a follow-up system. So if you're getting visitors, but you don't really know what to do with them, you are definitely in the right place. And you're in the right place if you don't have the time or the staff for follow-up. And so recently I had a conversation with a pastor who was just kind of saying, hey, this whole assimilation process, that sounds great, follow-up sounds great, but I don't have any staff and I'm swamped. And so if that's you, you're in that position where you just kind of feel overwhelmed, you are definitely in the right place. And you're in the right place if you're struggling with retention. People are coming to your church, they're coming for the first time, but maybe they're not coming back, or they come for a week or two, but they're not sticking around. And you're definitely in the right place if you feel like a bad salesman. If you feel like you're standing in front of the pulpit and doing everything you can to persuade visitors to return. And you're definitely in the right place if you feel like a fraud. If you're preaching from the pulpit, you look at the crowd and you just know that you wish you can do better for them. You wish you had a better process to connect them and to grow them. And then you're definitely in the right place if you feel like if you desire to see visitors to call your church home. And so about back in 2012, we kind of did this assessment, and we realized we crunched some numbers, and we realized that we had, for the entire year, we had 1,190 first-time visitors come to our church. But then when we looked at our membership process and our connection process, we only connected about 20 of them, which was 2%. So 2% of all of our first-time visitors connected to our church and became members. And at the same time, we also did a second survey. And in the survey, we realized that 30% of the congregation felt lost. At that time, Christ Tabernacle, which is a church where I serve at, we had about 1,500 members. Members being individuals who actually went through the membership class. And so 30% of them, which is probably somewhere about let's say 400 of them, felt lost. And so this was one of those moments where it was just really overwhelming to kind of see what the numbers were saying to us. When we were in services, worship felt great, everything felt great, felt like we were doing a fantastic job. But then when we looked at the numbers, we realized we were missing certain things. And one of Bill Hybels' favorite sayings is that facts are our friends. And I understand what he says, although at the same time, facts also hurt, because you want to believe that you're doing things with excellence and everything is going well, but there's those moments where reality is that you're struggling at times. And so facts are definitely our friends. And so at that moment, it was important for us to have the facts in front of us, because we could have continued with our mindset that everything is okay, or we could accept the facts and make a determination that we were going to change. And that's exactly what we did. So what we did was we got to work and we pulled the teams together. We started to do some research and we started to ask some questions and try to figure some things out. And so the result was that if you look at the chart back in 2012, the red represents the amount of first-time visitors we had. And so in 2012, we had about 1,190 first-time visitors. The gray represents the amount of first-time visitors who actually became members within the same year. And so that number was 20, which was about 2%. Then in 2013, it got a little bit better. 2013, we had probably about 1,300 first-time visitors. And then we had somewhere about 35 to 40 of them become members. Then we made some real significant changes. And in 2014, we had about 1,700 first-time visitors. But out of that 1,700, we actually started to connect. We had about, I would say, we had about somewhere about 80 or 90 of those visitors become members. And then in 2015, we did an informal poll in our membership process. We would just kind of ask, hey, if anyone is here, anyone is joining our church who would like to join our church, who's been here less than 6 months, raise your hand. And at that point, in the entire class, we had about 300 members, 300 new members for the year of 2015, and 60% of them had come to Christ Tabernacle for the first time in 2015. And so we knew we were onto something in regards to our connection process, our assimilation process. And so as I mentioned earlier, I'm the discipleship pastor at Christ Tabernacle, and I want to just take 30 seconds just to share a little bit about who I am. And so this is me, my wife, and my older son, my 3-year-old. I've been married for about 12 years now, and I've got 2 wonderful boys. To my left is my 1-year-old Silas, and to the right, Nicholas. And I'm also the founder of Thrive Church Coaching. And the real reason that I created Thrive is that I started to see that there were certain resources that I had access to. And there were certain things that I got to learn because I was around people who either were doing it really well, or I got to actually go and meet with pastors who were successful, who were doing assimilation well. And I started to learn some certain things and put them into practice and see success. But there was this part of me that just kept bothering me because I knew other pastors who were struggling in areas that we were succeeding. And so I made a commitment. I said, look, the things that I'm learning, I want to make sure I share with others, because it's at the end of the day, the Church of Christ is the hope of the world. It's really in every community you're at, whether it's Texas or Pennsylvania, wherever you're at, your church is the light of the world in that area. And it should be that we're doing things well, that we're seeing success in these areas, not that we're struggling. And so today's training is called How to Get Visitors to Call Your Church Home. And for the agenda for today, we're going to do three things. One, I'm going to share with you 6 steps for attracting, connecting, and growing visitors. You can call it a assimilation process. I'm also going to share with you a opportunity for us to be able to work together, where I can possibly come alongside of you and serve you. And then finally, we're going to take some time out for Q&A. And so if you have any questions, just jot them to the side. And then when we get to the Q&A portion, I'd love to answer as many questions as I can. I'll be here to answer all the questions that are necessary. And so again, 6 steps for attracting, connecting, and growing. And so here are the 6 steps. Step number 1 is creating a culture of evangelism. Step number 2 is think guest first. Step number 3 is sermons that connect. And step number 4 is having an effective follow-up. Step number 5 is membership. And step number 6 is spiritual growth, or what I call a discipleship funnel. And so let's jump right into step number 1. Step number 1 is a culture of evangelism. And the goal of evangelism is to encourage your congregation to invite. I've heard one church say it this way, said, just don't invite people, but bring them. Make it your business to go to their house, knock on the doors, invite them to dinner, invite them for a cup of coffee, and bring them to the church. And it's interesting because since 1980, church membership in the U.S. has dropped each year by a minimum of 10%, which when I read that stat, it says 2 things to me. It says, 1, people are joining our church, but we're having a hard time retaining them. But 2, even if people are leaving our church, we're not attracting other new members. We're not connecting them. And so as a result of people leaving and not bringing in more people, we're starting to see a drop in membership. And so the way to counteract that is to become a church that attracts. And by attracting, I'm not saying that you've got to compromise. I'm not saying that you got to do stuff you feel icky about. What I am saying is that you've got to present yourself in a way that makes the teachings of Christ attractive. And so let me give you 3 steps to becoming an attractive church. Here's the first. You have got to pursue excellence. You have got to pursue excellence, whether it's in how you maintain your building, whether it's in the actual services, the worship, the experience. Everything has to maintain excellence or pursue excellence, communicate excellence. Because in your pursuit or your communication of excellence, what you are doing is you're communicating to people how much you care for them. Seth Godin says this. He says, don't waste money marketing. Instead, invest in making your product the best possible. And so I don't want to sound irreverent by insinuating that our church and our services are a product. But what I am suggesting is that instead of going crazy trying to get people to come to our church, I am positive that if we present a service that is impeccable, amazing, the presence of God is there, people are going to sense the presence, they're going to enjoy the worship service, and they're going to invite others. And so instead of spending our time promoting ourselves, we can spend our time investing in the actual service and the quality of the service. And so just a quick poll. On a scale of 1 to 10, rate your commitment to excellence. On a scale of 1 to 10, just kind of jump into the chat and rate your commitment to excellence. And so just, you can put it right into the chat and just kind of let me know, what is your commitment to excellence? Step 2, I want you to mobilize your congregation. And so this is what we mean by mobilizing your congregation. Jesus kind of said this. He said it this way. He said that his house or my house should be full. So then our congregation should be inspired or challenged to invite others. Our congregation should be in a place where they're constantly reaching out to others. And so if I asked anyone in your congregation, if I had to say to anyone in your congregation, when I say the word evangelist, what comes to their mind? Most likely, most people, when they think of an evangelist, they think of a guy on TV, television, white suit, white shoes. And the challenge with that is that most people, when they see them, when they see the evangelist, they don't think of themselves in that manner. They don't see themselves as the white guy, the guy with the white suit and the white shirt and the white shoes. But Elton Trueblood, he says it this way. He says evangelism is not a professional job for a few trained men, but is instead the unrelenting responsibility of every person who belongs to the company of Jesus. It says everyone in your congregation has a responsibility to invite. And so if I was to go to your congregation again and ask them the second question, who has had the biggest impact on your coming to Christ, on your making a commitment to Christ? Most people would not say the evangelist or the televangelist, the guy with the white shoes. They would say the grandma, the aunt, or the uncle, the person who prayed them into the kingdom. They would say, for myself, I personally, I made a commitment to Christ close to 20, say about 20, 21 years ago, because I had a cousin who invited me and invited me and invited me. And then he would call me and he would say he was praying for me. And then he would call me and then he would invite me. And so when I think of who do I relate more to, the individual that prays or the televangelist, I relate more to the individual who would pray for me, who invited me to the church. And so, in essence, when it comes to mobilizing our congregation, we've got to help them understand that they don't have to be the televangelist, but they can be more like the person who comes alongside someone and just prays for them, encourages them, and is just there for them and invites them. And God will use it as part of the process to bring people to the kingdom. And so here's step 3 to becoming an attractive church. You've got to preach Christ. Bottom line, you have got to preach Christ. Here's a friend of mine. Is one of my best friends. I want to introduce you to him. His name is Nathaniel Rosen. When I met Nate, he was struggling. He was working as a clerk in a law firm. He was renting a small room, and he shared a bathroom, kitchen area with other individuals. Honestly, he used to live off a cup of noodle soup. He had a baby girl from a bad relationship. He used to sell drugs. He was a stick-up kid. He didn't have any formal training, but he had a radical conversion. And so he became a member of Christ Tabernacle. He got involved. He started serving in ministry, doing Bible study, developing friendships, and then eventually he started to grow. And over some time, he really started to mature in his walk. Eventually, he found a good job. He started to get things together. He got married to his wife, Swanette. And now he's got a huge family, owns his own home, and really should have been a statistic, but God transformed him and renewed him. And so his journey really started with this assimilation process. His journey started with him connecting to a church, becoming a member, going through some of the discipleship classes. And I share it with you because that's how it should be. As people come to our church, when our assimilation process is strong, people get connected with Jesus, and then they begin to grow. So that's step 1, creating a culture of evangelism. Step 2, you need to think guest first. You need to think guest first. And so thinking guest first, the goal of this is to create an unforgettable experience. An unforgettable experience. And so step 1 is you've got to know your audience. You've got to know your audience. You've got to be able to understand where they're coming from and what are their challenges. You've got to know how to best serve them. And so step 2 with that is you've got to create a welcoming environment. You've got to create an environment where whether it's your greeters or your ushers, you got to create an environment where they're saying good morning or good afternoon, and it's not just, hey, it's not just, hey, thanks for coming, but it's more like, hey, we're really glad you came. And so you've got to architect that or design that environment. And so the question is how can or what can you do to limit someone's fears or concerns? And again, remember, we're talking about first-time visitors. They don't know where the restroom is. They don't even know where the sanctuary is. How can we lessen their concerns or their fears? And I remember going to a church. This was a pastor that I was coaching, and I went to his church. And as I'm walking to his church, I realized that his actual sanctuary was in a building that held other businesses. So I start to walk in, there's doors to the left, to the right, and each door is towards a different business. And I started to get a little overwhelmed because I didn't know how to enter. I didn't know where to go. Comes ends up happening is that his building was all the way to the end, to the back. And so I come, and as I talked to him, the first thing I said to him was, "Hey, on Sundays, you've got to post greeters in that hallway because it's a long hallway. And if I'm seasoned, I've been at the church for a long time, and I'm coming here for the first time and I feel apprehensive. Imagine your first time visitors on Sunday. So what can you do? What kind of environment can you create to make people feel welcomed?" Here's an image, a picture of one of the other churches I'm working with. This is a church of 60 members in New Jersey. And they've got their visitor gifts, they've got balloons. I can imagine on Sunday these areas are staffed with volunteers, and it's in a welcoming environment that they're creating for their guests. Here's step 3. You've got to handle challenges. And this is what I mean by handling challenges. It's their customer behavior tells us that customers who they become even more loyal if they experience a problem which is sorted out for them quickly. And so what can happen is you've got people who will come to your church, maybe the baby's crying, maybe the child is crying, maybe the children's area is full, and they're challenged and they may be frustrated. But by resolving their frustration, handling their issue on the moment, you're going to gain a potential follower. You're going to gain their loyalty because you've resolved an issue. And it says they're going to be more loyal if they experience a problem which is sorted out for them quickly, as opposed to if the problem had never occurred in the first place. Let me give you a quick model for how to help solve these kind of issues. It's called the LEARN model. And so I want you to know that you're always going to have issues. That's just the reality of it. Okay, so you cannot go into a situation thinking you're not going to have issues. You're going to have issues, but you've got to have a model for resolving those issues. And so here's the first. It's the letter L, and it's listen. And so this is where you listen carefully to your customer. You don't interrupt them. You don't tell them to calm down, which is probably one of the worst things you can do. You just let them get whatever their challenges are, whatever it is, off their chest. And then the next letter is E, for empathize. And this is where you try to get to understand what's the difficulty that your customer or the visitor is having. Repeat it back to them word for word, or use the last part of their sentence. And really, it's about creating empathy, this feeling of, hey, I understand what you're going through. Then the next step is to apologize. You got to apologize to the customer, apologize to the visitor, even if you feel that you have no part in the problem. And I am sorry that you experienced. I'm sorry that the children's area is full. What it does, it lessens some of the tension in the air. It makes them understand, it makes them feel like you're on their side, which you should be. R is to reach. And so this is where you decide, what are you going to do to resolve the problem? How are you going to reach them? How are you going to help them in this issue? And you've got to, whatever the resolution is, you've got to make sure you tell the customer. And then N is for now. In other words, don't delay. Take immediate action. See, the longer you wait on resolving an issue, the harder it's going to be to produce great service. The harder it is at the end for the visitor to feel like you're on their side. So make sure that immediately you resolve the issue and let them know what you're doing. So that's step 2. Step 3, sermons that connect. And so the goal of step 3, preaching sermons that connect, is this concept of mutuality. And mutuality is really just this idea that we're all on the same side, or that there's no difference between me and you. What you really want is for someone who's sitting in the congregation to point at the pastor who's preaching and say, hey, whatever God did for him, because I'm no different than the person who's preaching. Whatever God did for him, he can do for me. And that's this idea of mutuality. We're all in the same, we're all equivalent, we're all the same at the foot of the cross. And so there's 3 ways to accomplish this. And the first is you want to tell personal stories. You want to use personal stories. And so I did that recently. I was preaching about unity, talking to a congregation just about the importance of being unified. And I just told a story about my 2 boys. My son, Nicholas, who's on the right, he's 3 years old. He had a very hard time when Silas, the little one, came along, because now he had to share his toys, he had to share all the attention. It was very difficult for him. So there was this one moment where uh, my 3 year old starts to take every single toy away from my 1 year old. My 1 year old tries to grab a toy, the 3 year old takes it away. 1 year old will grab the toy, 3 year old will take it away. Finally, I said to him, "If you do it again, I'm gonna give you timeout." Did it one more time, and so I sat him down, got on one knee, looked him in the eye, and just said, "Hey, Silas is my son, and you're my son. I love him, and I also love you. But what I love most is when my boys get along." And then I just kind of paused for a moment. Everybody's like, "Oh." And then I looked at the congregation and just said, "You know what? You're sons and daughters of the living God. He's your Father in heaven. And what he wants more than anything else is for his children to get along." And then I went on to expound on how to and the things you have to do and forgiveness and letting things go. But the story set up and made a connection with the congregation. I connected with those who were parents, and I also connected with those who were siblings who may have had some sibling rivalry issues. So that's step one, personal story. Step two is illustrations. And an illustration is really a comparison or an example intended to help explain something. Or let me say it this way. Right? We use illustrations, we use something familiar to explain something unfamiliar. A friend of mine recently preached about, he was communicating to husbands in regards to how they treated their wives. And he was talking about washing their wives with the word. And he talked about the tag on your shirt, how it says wash gently. And he said too many of us aren't like that shirt where we wash our wives with the word, but we use it in such a way to manipulate or direct them or get our own way. And he said instead, the t-shirt instructs us, the tag on the shirt instructs us to wash our wives gently, to wash them with the word gently. And it was just a great illustration, and it just kind of brought some clarity to things. And so that's step two. Step three is just creating some next steps. And really, what happens is when we're preaching, when we're communicating, we end up with a room asking this one question. They're wondering, what do I do with what you just told me? What do I do with what you just told me? And so, just real quick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how effective are your sermons in engaging first time visitors? Just kind of put that right into the chat. How effective are you in regards to connecting with first time visitors? So I just want you to kind of think about that. And so step four is all about follow up. This is one of my favorite areas because follow up is really about creating or building relationships. And so when we talk about follow up, the goal of follow up is building relationships. And so I follow a couple of different marketers, just kind of learn from them. And they've got this saying that it takes 7 touches to build trust. It takes 7 touches to build trust. And so let me ask you this question. Do you have the staff or the volunteers for effective follow-up? Do you have the staff or volunteers for effective follow-up? And so recently I was speaking with one of the pastors that I'm coaching. And when I was talking with them, they were saying to me, they were talking to me a little bit about just how challenging follow-up was to them. And they were talking about the amount of phone calls they were making and letters that were going out. And everything seemed so hand-to-hand combat, one-on-one. It requires so much manpower. And she just blanked, point blank asked me the question. She said, how can I do strong follow-up when I don't have enough staff or volunteers? And so I think for many of us, the question is, how do we do effective follow-up? We're getting 20, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 first-time visitors on a Sunday, but we've only got 3 or 4 people helping us to do follow-up. So what is the secret to effective follow-up? So here's the secret. It's called automation. And so automation is really just operating a process by electronic devices, reducing human intervention to a minimum. Or let me say it this way, just to quote Scrooge McDuck, it's not working harder, it's working smarter. And so automation is really just making easier by using computers or programs to help reduce the amount of work you've got to do And truthfully, what happens is when you automate properly, it makes you more effective. So I want to just take a couple of seconds and just a couple of minutes and unpack the 4 tools that I utilize for effective follow-up. And so I just want you to know that on a weekly basis, we average somewhere about 50 to about 75 first-time visitors. And so let me just share with you 4 tools that we use to follow up with these 50 to 75 first-time visitors. The first tool is email. When most of us think of email, we think of Outlook, but I'm not referring to Outlook. I'm referring to, we utilize Aweber. And so Aweber is an email marketing tool. And what you can easily do is this, the way it works is that you actually take some time up front. This is what's awesome about automation is you do the work up front, you do hard work up front, and then on the back end, it pays off. And so up front, we had to sit down and we had to write these emails. So you see 3 emails. But then once they're in the system, you'll see, for example, email number 1, thanks for visiting, and enter someone's name, and it says it sends it immediately. Then the second email, here's a video from, and you see it sends 4 days after the previous message. And then the third email is sent 11 days after the previous message. What automation does is we take the names, we enter it into Aweber, into the system, and automatically these emails are being sent out on our behalf. And so the second tool that we utilize, so there's automation, and then we combine that with Vimeo. And I'm sure many of you know Vimeo is extremely popular. It's a site where you can watch streaming videos. And so in order to connect with a lot of our members, what we've done is we suggest that your senior pastor, his wife, sit down and shoot a first-time visitor greeting. And so this is a video where we're just kind of greeting our visitors, sharing with them, just kind of saying thank you, share a little bit about your testimony, your personal life. And then you just can send it to them via email. And what's amazing is that this is the email that gets the most amount of opens. And the reason is because when people see your face, they feel connected to you. And so if you wanted to take a look at this video and watch it in its totality, you can go to vimeo.com/123970426. That's vimeo.com/123970426. And you'll be able to actually watch the video in its totality there. Tool number 3 is easy texting. And so easy texting is really just what it is, a texting program. And what we found is that when it comes to reaching people, texting is one of the most easiest ways to connect with people because they get it right on their phone, and most people just immediately that they get a text, they look. And so if you want to communicate effectively with someone, easy texting is probably the way to go. And so this is kind of like their system, the way it looks. And what you can do is easily you can just create an email. If you look near the bottom of this image, it says schedule delivery, meaning you can create the email and then schedule it for the future. And again, all you've got to do is import the names. And once you import the names, you can schedule it and send it out. And what you see here is when people get text from us, some of them respond. Some of them just kind of get back to us. They'll reply. And this is another way that we utilize the easy texting. On October 31st, we held our Halloween alternative event. We had probably about 500, 600, 700 parents, children in the room. And near the end, we just kind of said to every parent, hey, we've got a coloring book for your child, and we've got some next steps that you can take with your child. If you'd like to download the coloring book, send a text message to the word Minions, MINIONS. And Minions in easy text was just a keyword that we created. So when someone would text the word Minions to 313131, they would then get a reply with a link to the PDF. And so if you tried it now, it's not going to work because we canceled or we closed out, we deleted the keyword. But it was an easy way for us to get a response from a large crowd. And part of what I want you to think about when you're thinking of automation is that you may have to shy away a little bit from the one-to-one, and you can do one-to-many. Now, the one thing about automation, I will warn this to you, is that if you solely depend on automation, it becomes a bit impersonal. And so you want to make sure you're combining automation with the personal touches. so you don't feel like you're a stale church. Here's the fourth tool. It's called Call 'em All. And so Call 'em All is really just a robocall, a system for robocall that you can use with your churches. And so in the past, what we used to do was we would get, again, 20, 30, 40, 50 first-time visitors. I'd have 3 or 4 volunteers making a ton of phone calls at night, and we would end up just making 10, 15 phone calls. And so the byproduct was that that phone call list started to really pile up because we started to get behind. There were times where you wanted to remind people of something. And so again, another list of phone calls. Instead, now we use Call 'em All, which is a robocall. We get the senior pastor to record a message, and then we share it we send it out, and it pretty much within 10, 15 minutes, you can call 100, 200, 300 people with that one message. Now, again, if you do that on a consistent basis, it becomes personal. But for moments where you need reminders, for moments where you just want to reach out to everyone, just kind of give a touch, it works effectively. In fact, one time we were hosting a baptism, and I recorded a Call 'em All. I recorded a message, sent it out to about 200 or 300 people, and that Sunday I got one guy who got baptized, came out of the tent, came to me and said, "Hey, thanks for the voicemail. I wasn't gonna get baptized, but because of your voicemail, I decided to get baptized." Now, again, I didn't call him personally. I used Call 'em All, but with the features, it felt so personal that the pastor called me directly. And so you want to make sure this is something that you can definitely put to use. And the bonus tool, this is not probably not in your notes, but there's a bonus tool. One of my favorite tools that I use is called Fancy Hands. And so the only reason I'm suggesting this is because I know a ton of pastors who have said to me on countless times that they don't have enough staff or volunteers, and that the finances are in a place where they can't afford to hire anyone. And so Fancy Hands is really just a bunch of virtual assistants that are there to assist you. And the way it works is that you've got your request, you've got to-do items, you put them in, you put in a request, they receive the request, and then they process it. They do it for you. And so the way I use them is I'll have them check my emails and then send me an Excel file with the emails I've got to look at or the emails I've got to respond to. I'll have them check my voicemail. I'll have them make phone calls for me, have them do research for me. They can book airline tickets. They can do a ton of stuff. They can make purchases for you. There is a ton of stuff that they can do. And you've just got to think of it this way. They can do anything that does not require them to be in the office with you. And so it's a great, great resource. And so these are some of the stats, just so you know. Um, One of the things that you know, you can tell by the stats that I'm not really the kind of person who likes making phone calls, because they've made 87 phone calls for me, where they've only sent 13 emails for me, and I've sent a ton of emails on my own. I've made 171 requests. They spent 5.5 hours on the phone, and I've saved about 4 days worth of work, literally, whatever that time frame is, 60 seconds per 1 minute, 60 minutes per hour, 4 days worth of that in terms of, because of the assistance that they gave. And so I mentioned emails, and I just want to just remind you that there's a 21-day follow-up plan that I'm going to just kind of share with you how to access it at the end. It's a bonus that I'm making available. And I'm just sharing this at this point in time because we talked about the emails, we talked about the automation, and one of the biggest challenges is writing the emails, coming up with emails that are effective and that are going to connect with your visitors. Well, all those emails that we've written are in the 21-day follow-up plan, where you can utilize, you can kind of copy, paste, and adjust it so it works for your culture. But I just want to remind you of that. Step 5 is membership. Membership. And so the goal of membership is identification. Identification. And so this is really about going from that's the church that I go to that's my church. That's what identification is all about. And so the question is, how long is someone attending your church before they become a member? How long is someone attending your church before they become a member? And so when we did the research about 3 or 4 years ago, we realized that people were attending our church 3 or 4 years before they were willing to commit to our church. And really what that said to me is that our membership process required so much from people. It was scary for people. It was challenging for people. And so Now, after making some adjustments, making adjustments to our membership process, we got to the point where the majority of the people in our membership classes have been attending our church 6 months. And why is that so important? Because the longer that people are on the fringes, the higher the probability that they will not connect to your church. And so you want to make sure that there is a process, a clear membership process. You want to make sure that in the membership process, people understand what their next steps are. You want to make sure that they understand the mission and the values of your church. When we're talking about a membership process, we're not just referring to the discipleship component of it, where people are learning about the Lord, or they're learning about their Bibles, they're learning about the blood, they're learning about grace. It's not just that. It's also that they're learning about your mission, because they're going to align themselves. They're going to be part of making that mission come to fruition. And so you want to make sure that when it comes to the membership class, that they understand who you are. So you've got to make sure you are clear in your membership process. And membership should also be a launching pad into your church. So the way we utilize membership is that's your first step, because membership to us signifies a sense of accountability, aligning up together. And so if once you become a member of our church, once we're committed to one another, once I'm able to disciple you because you're committed to the church, you're committed to the process, then we can launch you into your next steps. And that's where you want to identify the next steps for individuals. So there are 6 next steps that I want to help you with. 6 steps to creating clear next steps for your new members. So here's step number 1. You want to start a membership care team. So a membership care team really is a group of volunteers that you've brought together with the purpose of hand-holding your new members through the process. It's making sure that they're in that they're finishing the membership class, or if there's some next steps, that there's phone calls to the ministry leader or phone calls to the actual new member. I liken it to a guidance counselor in the school who follows up with a student, checks on his grades, make sure he's in class, make sure he's applying for college. You want to make sure you have that because there's a sense of accountability there. Step number 2 is you want to identify next steps for each audience. And so your audience, you're going to have different types of audience. So for example, you've got people who want to become members of your church, but they're living common law, they're not married. What are your next steps for them? You may have people who went through your membership class, but they don't want to become members at the end. What are your next steps for them? You may have some people who are new. They just had a radical conversion experience. They just made a commitment to Christ, but they know nothing about the Bible. They have no religious background. What are you doing for them? You also have the audience of people who are seasoned. They've been part of the church. They've been attending for a minute. What do you have for them? And so you want to identify next steps for each audience. Then you want to administer assessments. And the reason I say this is because I believe that when people are serving in alignment with their spiritual giftings and their passions, they're less likely to walk away. So when we're talking about retention or closing the back door, part of it is aligning people's passions to opportunities. And the only way you do that is through getting to know what is their passions and their giftings, which are assessments, spiritual gift assessments, personality assessments. Make that a part of your membership process so you can get to know people, and really people get an opportunity to get to know themselves. Step 4 is creating or executing a next steps meeting. And so a next steps meeting is simple. It's really just all about giving people an opportunity to meet with a deacon or a key leader, and at this point they can plan out their next couple of steps at the church. So it may look something like this. Next steps may be, hey, I sit down with a couple, realize that they're not married. Their next steps in the next steps meeting, their next steps may be taking a foundational marriage class. Or I meet with someone who's new, he's ready, he's on fire. His next steps just may be getting involved in ministry. And at that point, the conversation may be about what is the best ministry for you to get involved in. So that's step 4. Step 5 is implement the next steps. Go and do it. Go join the ministry. Go to the class. And you're responsible for holding them accountable. You're responsible for making sure that people follow through. And if they don't, there should be a phone call or an email or just a way that we're reaching out to them saying, hey, you said you were going to go to class. You didn't. We just want to make sure everything is okay, or if there's any other way we can help you in this process. Step 6 is track new member progress. And this is so important because what happens is we help members, but then we never track where they're at and come back around and follow up. So what I mean by tracking is, are you checking in on their attendance? So they said they were joining a ministry, but have they actually attended the ministry? Or maybe taking a look at the attendance of a Bible study class. So maybe their next step was taking a Bible study class on, let's say, the book of Ephesians. Did they take the class? And being able to run these reports gives us a sense of accountability and follow up. So the more we know about where people are, the more we can ask the right questions and we can follow up with them. And really, this process is super important because it communicates this one clear statement to people, and it's that you matter. So when we're talking to new members, they need to know that they matter, that we care enough about them because they matter. All right, so here's the last step in the funnel, the last step in the attending to belonging process, and the 6 steps for attracting, connecting, and growing. And this is what I call a discipleship funnel or spiritual growth. And so the goal of this is spiritual growth. The goal of this process is to help people grow and mature in their walks with God. And the reason why is because mature believers, they give faithfully, they serve the most, and they evangelize the best. And that's a quote from Greg Hawkins from his book Reveal. And see, the thing is that mature believers and new believers all grow on different levels. They all grow on different levels. And so what we need is a process, a discipleship process that encompasses or reaches out to all of these levels. And so let me give you a quick map. This is a discipleship funnel that I came up with Pastor Randy Maldonado, who's one of the coaches for Thrive and also works alongside of me at Christ Tabernacle. And we called it All to the Elder, implying that we were going to create a process from the first time you made a commitment to Christ all the way to eldership to make sure that you're growing. And so there are phases for non-members. There are things that are only available to a non-member, or there are things that are available to just members or to just upcoming leaders or advanced leaders. And so you want to create a map or a layout of what this may look like for your church. What is your discipleship funnel? How does someone go from I made a commitment to Christ all the way through to, hey, now I'm leading a ministry, or now I am a candidate for becoming a pastor at this church? And so there are 4 distinct areas where people need to grow. So when you're creating your funnel, you've got to make sure that you're thinking you've got these 4 areas in mind. Here's area number 1. You want to create an area of community. You want people to grow in community and relationships. People come to your church because of your preaching, but they stay because of the relationships. There are certain verses that can only be carried out or applied in community. And so community is so important, whether it's small groups or some form of serving in ministry together. You want to make sure people are growing in relationships to one another. The next thing is you want to provide what I call practical stewardship. And so practical stewardship is not just financial stewardship, but practical stewardship is all about how Christianity gets played out in your day-to-day life. What does it look like when I'm at home? What does my faith look like when I'm at the job, when I'm at work? What does it mean for me to be single? Or what does it mean for me to be a Christian parent? How do I raise up a child in a way that honors God? These are lessons that fall under the concept of practical stewardship. And it's super important. I remember talking to a leader in the men's ministry at our church, and he was just kind of saying to me how he didn't know what it meant to be a father, and he didn't know what it meant to be a husband. He never learned those things. And then one day he woke up and his whole family was gone. And he just said that to me, communicating the importance of teaching people practical stewardship, learning how to be men, learning how to be godly women, young women being raised up and being taught how to honor God in their relationships and how to honor God in their jobs. And what does it look like to be a Christian and be single? What does it look like to be a Christian, be employed, or be a Christian and be among secular friends? What does it look like to be a Christian and married? All those things fall under the context of practical stewardship. Then the third area is biblical studies. And really, this is about people getting to know how to read their Bible and getting to know their Bible. And the idea behind this biblical studies, is simply the concept of, if the more you have Christ in you, the more you get to know God's word, the more godly you're going to be. And so we want to make sure that people are orienting their lives to God's word and not trying to orient his word towards their lives. And what I have found is that the more people know God's word and have oriented their lives towards his word, the less you're going to have to deal with counseling and issues in the church, because the more that they're submitted to God's word. And so biblical studies is super important in that area. And then the last one is leadership development. And so leadership development, in essence, is really about creating the opportunities to grow the people in your church. Because you need leaders to grow your church. You need leaders to accomplish great things for God. And so here are four, or I think there's three, potentially four leadership development opportunities or areas. And so the first is emerging leaders. And emerging leaders are really leaders who are new on the scene. They're new to the church and new to leadership. And these are people you've got to invest in developing their character. Then there's existing leaders, and existing leaders are leaders who have been doing this for a while. They're probably ministry leaders, and these guys, probably you don't have to. Their character has probably been dealt with, or you're developing. It's been further developed, and so what you want to work with when it comes to existing leaders is their skills, because what we're infamous for doing, is bringing someone into leadership and then kind of saying, "Hey, sink or swim, figure it out," as opposed to having a process for holding their hand and helping them grow. The next phase then is advanced leaders. And this is for us, the church where I'm at, we look at this for deacon. So if you're up for deaconcy or deaconry, I'm not even, if you're up to be a deacon, then you've got to take a class in terms of the development. And this is really more about leading an organization, or leading within the context of an organization. It's not just leading yourself, it's not just leading teams, it's not just skills, it's a further or deeper level of character, commitment, convictions within the context of the organization. And the last level is that of elders. And so elders is really synonymous to pastors, or maybe board members, or your church may call them elders. And this is kind of like the highest level of leadership within the church itself, within the context of a church. So this might be the pastors of your church. This might be, again, your senior leaders. And really, this is all about, again, leading within the context of an organization. And so those are the 6 steps for attracting, connecting, growing visitors. I hope you kind of enjoyed that, right? So step 1 is creating a culture of evangelism, where we're going to excite our people, get them to invite. Step 2, we're going to be thinking guests first. So when people come to our church, so I hope tracking with the thought process, culture of evangelism, we're inviting people to our church. When they get to our church, we're thinking guests first. So we're going to serve them. We're going to make them feel super special. Step 3, they're going to go from the lobby area and encountering some of our greeters. They're going to go to the actual service and listen to our sermons. Step 4, we're going to have effective follow-up. So the sermon is over, the service is over, but we're going to call them, we're going to reach out to them, we're going to connect with them. Step 5, once we're reaching out to them, they're going to eventually become members of our church. They're going to identify with the church. And then step 6, now that they're a part of our church, there's that spiritual growth component where they're growing spiritually, they're maturing. So what do you think? I mean, do you think if you started implementing these 6 steps, do you think if you started encouraging your congregation to be a bringer, or if you started thinking, guests first and begin architecting the experience that guests have, or if your discipleship process met your different audience levels, or if you had an assimilation process, do you think you'd begin to make a difference in your church, in your ministry? Do you think that you can get visitors to call your church home? Do you think that your church would begin to experience exponential growth? And so I'm not really sure why you showed up, but I want to take a couple of guesses. I'm assuming you came on tonight because you're pretty much tired of not getting the expected results. You know that you need to do assimilation. You know that you want to reach people. People are coming to the church, but you're not really sure how to go along, how to get that. Or you know that God's got more for you. You're just not sure how to get there. So you kind of read the signs. You know that there's great opportunity to do ministry, but you're not 100% sure how to connect people once they get to your church. Maybe you're just at a place where you're just like, hey, I need help. I am drowning. People are leaving, people are coming to the church, they're visiting, and then they're not coming back. And we're not really sure how to follow up. And our follow up system really is ineffective. Or maybe you're just tired of mediocre ministry. You're kind of at the place where you're just like, hey, we're doing the same thing over and over again, but we're not getting any different results. Or maybe you see the potential for growth, but because you see the potential, you want to go from potential to actuality. You're just like, hey, we want to really see some growth. People are coming back, but how do we grow them? How do we mature them? How do we take them to that next level? Or you might have showed up today because you have a heart for the people. You love people. You just aren't sure what to do with them once they're there. And like I said, maybe you have a passion, and what you need is skills to accompany that passion. I just want to encourage you because I think it's time. I think it's time to take your church and your ministry to the next level. And really, it begins with you. It begins with your commitment to growing your assimilation process. And I just want you to know that everything I share with you, nothing of it is theory. All the examples I gave you, I shared with you as theory. This is stuff that we've seen, we've done, we've struggled with. And did it take time? Of course. I mean, it took time to grow in these areas. It's time, it's a commitment, it's a financial commitment, it took an investment of time on my part. And let me tell you, I would have given anything to have someone come alongside of me, pour into me, and coach me. I mean, I've read all the books about assimilation I could get my hands on. I went to different conferences. I tried to study and learn from different churches. But ultimately, what really would have helped me accomplish my goals a lot quicker would have been somebody holding my hand. But instead, I had to figure it out on my own, and it took a lot of mistakes. But I want you to know that it doesn't have to be the same for you. You don't have to struggle making mistakes to learn the assimilation process. And I know that you want to take your assimilation to the next level. And because of that, I want to introduce you to an opportunity where I can come alongside and serve you in your church. And it's called Attending to Belonging. Because our goal is to get people who are attending your church to begin to belong to your church. And so Attending to Belong are really 6 steps to help you attract, connect, and grow your church. And here's what's going to happen. Because Attending to Belonging is a premium online course for pastors looking to strengthen their assimilation process. And so again, 6 steps to help you attract, connect, and grow your church. And here's what's going to happen with Attending to Belonging. When you're in the program, you're going to begin to see an increase in new visitors coming every month. You're going to see the number of people who join your church increase. Why? Because the connection process is stronger. Why are you're getting new visitors? Because you're creating a culture of evangelism, and so people are inviting. The quality of the members are going to increase because your membership process is going to be stronger. It's going to be more focused. And so when people go through your membership process, they're going to walk away understanding your vision and being on board for the vision. You're going to begin to develop leaders at a greater level. So it's not just going to be those leaders who are good because maybe they learned at their job or they're just naturally gifted leaders. You're going to have a process for developing leaders throughout the church. You're going to have people serve with greater excellence because they're committed to the church, but also because you've aligned their passions and their giftings to the serving opportunities. And so this is Pastor Joe Hernandez. He took the course about a year ago, and one of the things he said to me was that Attending to Belonging, you learn the kind of nuts and bolts of ministry you don't learn in seminary. And he went to seminary school, and I guess there were some components of just day-to-day nuts and bolts insights that he was able to learn through the program. And so I want you to know in the program, here's what you're going to get. There are 6 30 to 40 minutes how-to video coaching. So there's 6 30 to 40. Video number 1 is creating a culture of evangelism. Video number 2 is all about thinking guests first. Video number 3 is all about preaching sermons that connect. Video number 4 is about follow-up. Video number 5 is about membership. And then video number 6 is about creating a discipleship funnel. And so with this, you're also going to have full access to the membership site. And it's lifelong access. So once you purchase it, once you're in the program, you've got full access for the entirety of your life. In the program, you're also going to get ready-to-use resources. So every module, every step has resources. So for example, with the culture of evangelism, what we've got is we've got a reach in, reach out. Because in order for you to really reach out to the congregation, you first, for you to reach out to those who you want to invite and evangelize, first you've got to reach into your congregation. You've got to mobilize them. And so one of the worksheets is really a calendaring process where you can decide, hey, we're going to do these evangelistic opportunities, and this is when we're going to reach in and really mobilize our congregation and excite them to invite. So you've got ready to use resources like that. I've got flyer templates that you can utilize, and Get Connect cards, which are cards that you can just kind of put information and get visitor information, their names and their emails when they're a first time visitor. And again, like I mentioned, these are done for you resources. And so some of these resources are resources that they're emails that have already been pre-written. You can just copy and paste them and put them to use. And I want you to know that this is the best training that we've got. This is what would some this is our very best. And also inside you're going to get 6 interviews with ministry experts. So these are interviews where week 1 or module 1, when we're talking about a culture of evangelism, I sit down with Barbie Acevedo, who's a service producer, and we talk about how to craft a service that's going to reach the lost. And then when we talk about preaching sermons that connect with the lost, I interview Pastor Adam Derson. We talk about making altar calls and how to create and engineer an environment where we're creating altar calls, where we're creating an environment where people are more comfortable in responding to an altar call. And as I mentioned, this is a fast acting bonus. So as I mentioned earlier, you stay tuned to the end. There's a 21-day follow-up plan. And so in essence, if you sign up today before 10 p.m., you're going to have the 21-day follow-up plan. And the plan includes a script for doing a video greeting for your pastor and his wife, includes an email. All of the emails are pre-written. You can just copy and paste these emails. And really, this is going to get you, it also has a calendar for a 21-day follow-up. And this is really going to give you a boost in regards to setting up your follow-up plan. And so just reaffirming what you're going to learn. As I mentioned, the 30 to 40 minutes, each video covers the following. It covers 3 phases. The first is attracting. And so we're going to attract, which is step 1, how to create a culture of evangelism. Step 2, how to create a great guest experience, or how to think guest first. Then the second level is connecting, right? So we're going to attract people, then we're going to connect them. We're going to connect them by learning how to preach sermons that connect with guests and how to follow it without becoming what I call a stalker. Then the next one is growing. So once people are attracted and they're connected to your church, then we've got to grow them. We've got to mature them. Where we talk about how to develop an effective membership course and how to develop discipleship process. And so every single step that I just identified, all 6 steps are going to have a master training, 30 to 40 minutes, are also going to have done for you resources, and are also going to have these expert interviews where I sit down with individuals and really get the best out of them. And so the resource is available at attendingtobelonging.com. And so I'm sure you may be thinking, listen, I'm just getting started. I'm not really sure if this is the right resource for me. And I want you to know, if you're getting started, this is exactly the right resource for you so that you can get a boost in the process. So you're not creating a simulation on your own. You're not creating your process on your own. Some of you might be thinking you don't have the money for this. Well, in a moment, I'm going to tell you the amount, and I think it's going to be super, super inexpensive. And really, it's customized in such a way where it's beneficial for your budget. Because I recognize that churches have small budgets, but yet we've got to make sure that we have a strong assimilation process. Some of you might be thinking, well, you're too busy for this process. Let me just say this. If you don't have a focus on connecting your visitors, you may be too busy in the wrong areas. You want to make sure that somewhere along the line, someone is responsible for connecting. And if it's not you, then someone else. But someone has to be responsible for making sure that visitors are connecting and growing in your church. Some of you may be thinking this isn't the right time. And so I would say, with the holidays coming up, this is the perfect time for you to make sure that you strengthen your assimilation process. And you may be thinking, well, you don't trust yourself to do the work. And I absolutely get that. I don't want you to invest in a program that you're not going to do the work. But what we have is we have emails and follow-up for accountability. And so what's the investment? I know you've been all been thinking this. All right, he's been talking for a while, but what's the investment? Give me the bottom line. And so the total value of this program, when you think about all of the bonuses that are available, you think about all of the videos and the resources and the expert interviews, it's $1,500. This includes a 30-day money-back guarantee. So from now to the end of December, maybe the first week or so of January, um, if you want to cancel, you get all of your money back, not a problem, no questions asked. And so the investment to get access to the program is 6 monthly payments of $39. 6 monthly payments of $39, or one payment of $175. And if you take the one payment, you're saving 25% of the overall cost. And so again, the fast acting bonus, if you sign up today before 10 p.m., you're going to have the 21-day follow-up plan, in addition to 2 other bonuses that are available online. And again, it's attendingtobelonging.com. And so at this point, we're going to just kind of switch some gears, and just going to take some of the questions and just answer. So if you've got any questions, just type it right in, and I'll answer any questions you have in regards to the assimilation process. And so one question that comes in is, how do we actually get visitor email, phone number when they visit? That's a great question. And we outlined this in the program, but one of the best ways to do it is by giving a first-time visitor gift. Now, what we used to do is give gifts and give people a card. If they were a first-time visitor, we would give them a card, and then they would have to walk somewhere to redeem their gift. But we changed the process, and we saw in 1 month we went from about 100 first-time visitors to 500, all in 1 month, because what we did was we started to give them the gift in the room. And so all those people who were introverted, who just were afraid of raising their hand because they didn't want to be identified, they started to get their gift in the room. And so the way it simply worked is this. Whoever was the host would kind of come up and he would say, hey, we love first-time visitors. We're so excited that you're here. Our guest service workers or our ushers would come alongside, come around, and they would then have their gifts in hands. And if with their gift in hands, they would everyone would see, anyone who was a visitor would see the gift. They would raise their hand, and in the gift, we actually put the card in. We put a visitor card in. And so the host then say to everyone, hey, everything in that gift is yours except for the card. When the offering basket comes around, we want you to put your information in the card, put your information on the card and the card in the basket. And then we would say, hey, we're not going to sell your emails, whatever we need to do to lower the tension level. And the card, in essence, just really had a name, an email, and a phone number. No address, no other extra information, because we want to make it into something that was quick for someone to sign up for. Just trying to see the other questions. So another question that came up earlier was if we had to start from scratch, where would I recommend that they start? So I would always recommend that you start with step one, which is creating a culture of evangelism. And I would actually, I would encourage you to start from the process of creating a culture of excellence. So as we're looking at evangelism, we've got to look at our building, we've got to look at our services. Are we doing these things with excellence? So to make sure that we've got to make sure that when it comes to first-time visitors coming to our church, we want to make sure that we've got a process for people feeling, like they're feeling like our church cares for them. And so some of the things may look like, hey, what about the bathrooms? Is there a process for making sure that the bathrooms are clean in between services? Is there another process for making sure that in between the services, we're cleaning the actual sanctuaries? So all of those things are part of that process. All right, so at this point in time, I think I've answered most of the questions that have come up. If you've got any other questions, you can also just send me an email, ariel@christtabernacle.org. And I actually did not realize it was 10:15. So again, if you sign up for the Tending to Belonging program before 11 o'clock today, you'll also have the fast acting bonus, which is the 21-day follow-up plan. All right, so one more time, I want to just thank you guys all for jumping on. Really excited about the opportunity to share with you. I want to encourage you to make sure that you strengthen your assimilation process. All right, thank you guys so much. Have a great night, and may God bless your ministries. I want you to know that I'm praying that you thrive.